Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. I'm Eric, and I'm joined by returning guest, Detective Tessa Melville. You will know her from episode 98. And if you don't know her from episode 98, it may be worth going back to revisit that or to visit it for the first time. The reason being is we do a crash course of what brought Tessa into police work from her military career and ultimately through her different hats and experiences. But to keep it relatively on track, we didn't really dive into a lot of the experiences and some of her takeaways, experiences through the job, impact to health. And so that's where Tessa's coming back to talk to us more about that. So without further ado, Tessa, thanks for coming back on the show.
She's back.
She's here.
Yeah.
She's here remotely, but here in this online magical space.
Oh, yeah. The internet.
Yeah.
Incredible place.
Well, thank you for coming back on. And as I was sharing with you, we have a coworker that it's always kind of fun and kind of interesting when I find out like someone that we work with is like listening or following. But he's like, hey, let me know when part 2 happens. And I was trying to remember. I was like, wait, when did I bring that up? Because in planning and talking about coming on in the first place, we talked about all these topics. And I mean, you're very candid and it's very helpful, for sharing and mentorship. But at the same time, I was like, man, how do we keep this, how do we keep the theme on track, to what exactly are we talking about? Because we could probably spiderweb and talk for several hours.
Oh, yeah. Days, especially, with me. Like I could keep going. I could keep talking always.
Yeah. So maybe we're going to talk about some extreme circumstances that you've faced at work and since being a police officer, and then kind of your takeaways from that. And then maybe that's a better way to package it, kind of going more in the weeds, whereas before we were talking about the career progression that people may consider for the job and hiring and assignment, stuff like that.
Yeah. It's crazy because I was actually just talking to Commander Wheeler. We're talking about how this job, while it's so stressful and it's a lot, you still bring back like the best and craziest stories. And I love that about this place. And even like the bad stuff, you could take like the silver linings from. Like I'm a big proponent of finding that silver lining in like whatever horrific situation you're in. So I think I've done a good job of like applying that in my life. But with all the bad stories, there's also lots of really good ones too. And it's changed because this came up because I was a really, really quiet kid. My mom was talking about how I would never speak, like not around adults, not to other kids. I was just in my room talking, or not talking, drawing and just being artistic. And I don't think you would think that was the case if you talk to me now.
It's definitely a surprise to me.
I didn't find my confidence until I was here and dealt with all these situations. Because it gives you a lot to compare to, I think, like what you're looking at with life and the things like you face, like it makes everything maybe just a little less insignificant, but also completely significant. Like really important things are so small. And so,
are you talking about just when we deal with these, like, literal life and death circumstances, or just these extreme, like we're observing people's lives at critical moments or kind of falling apart, even if it's not life or death? It's like, well, the police are at your house, like because of relational issues. That's not good. And like CPS is involved. That's not good. And this was a big car crash and like your car's totaled and I don't know if you're going to have spinal issues for the rest of your life. Like that's not good.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you mean by like putting things into perspective?
Oh yeah. I think we talked about this on the first one too. Like like a car accident could be like a simple fender bender could be like someone's worst day.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to observe like humanity in like their worst moments, and you get to like really learn like what is important and how to apply that like to your own life. And that's like after Diego died, like that was like the biggest takeaway I took. Like I completely changed my life after that happened. And like for the better, hands down. Obviously I would trade it to have him back, but I became a much better person all around and a much happier person after that, because it forced me to look at some things a little different. Yeah. Because I wasn't living my life at that point. Like I was just existing. So
that's a huge reflection point. When you said that you tend to find the silver lining and or strive to, has that always been a thing, or is that something that you've come to develop through observing and being a part of some hardships?
I think it's just developed since I've been here, because, and like I said in the first one, I had a really easy life. Like life couldn't have been more set up for me. Like just socioeconomically and just with my family, like everything like that. I was set to go without real issues or like hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I was just here and just learning about different people and seeing them at their worst, or seeing my coworkers at their worst. It just gave me a new outlook on life.
Yeah. I think that's just such a key thing to just for people to ponder and think about, like, okay, like what is my tendency to find the silver lining? And, maybe it takes a dip first, but like, when do I kind of circle back and do that? Or do I do that? Right. Because to that point, we all know how it can be easy, or maybe easy isn't the best word. Maybe it can become natural to gravitate towards the cynicism and not judge you for it. Like we all have our moments, our days, or maybe our periods. Like, oh, those years were dark years. And I share about that quite a bit early for me. But like thinking about that and like what helps you do that. And have you thought about what helps you do that?
Man, so I've been very open about this in therapy since Diego died. I took a break there for a while and then went back, and it's just a lot of growing up and just figuring yourself out. Like, I don't think there's like one key example or a thing you have to do like to get back on top of it, get back on your life. But you just have to be like introspective and like ask yourself, like, what's it going to be for me, like, to get over this? And that was a helpful way for me to cope, is to turn it into like, how could I make this better? How could I be better?
Yeah. That's a good flip.
Thanks.
Did therapy help with that specifically? Or do you think it was the process that may have been alongside that introspection, that being curious to how you can get there?
I think it is more within myself. I'm kind of a bad like therapist client. Like I'm probably a bit too self-aware. So, but it's good when I get like that validation and everything, and someone is hearing me that's unbiased. So, but with my like ADHD, like I am always, there's no stopping like in my brain. It is constantly just, and so I think it's more helpful for me, like my internal self, to work those things out and be like, all right, this is what I need to do. So that's just for me personally. It's different for everyone.
Yeah. You might be a fantastic client, because like now I'm picturing you sitting there remotely or whatever, right? Where you're like, well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe I'm like,
that's literally what
coming back to that feeling on this, and maybe my coping mechanism is XYZ, and they're just kind of sitting there. But maybe, now I'm picturing them being like, no, Tessa, that does make a lot of sense. You're like, oh, that part. Yeah. Okay, cool. But
that's exactly what happens.
But there's like so much power in that too, because you being in that space and being in that session, would you be verbalizing it out loud, right? If not for that, right? Your mind's going a million places, but sometimes, surely our speech goes way slower than our brains go. And so you have to put it into sentences and thoughts, and somebody is like, I can understand what you're saying. You're like, cool. All right. You're making progress.
I have to get it out. Like, it has to leave my mouth for it. So, like, I can work on it in my head, but it does have to be expressed some way. Or else I'll just boil over and lose it over the small things.
Yeah.
Do you think that, what's your, like, if I may ask, what's your, like, I need to get my shit together moment? Like, in these situations, like, oh, I should probably take a step back. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, it's come in different forms. And yes, you may ask. I'm glad you asked. It's a great question. It's come in different forms at different times in life or career. Sometimes it was literally just, I mean, it's physical, like physiological, where like my eyeballs feel like they're burning and it's like I'm not sleeping enough or I'm like thinking about work too much. And sometimes like the eyeball burning is literally synonymous with screen time because I mean, when I was in recruiting, it was like managing this social account and podcast and then the work social account and then work emails. And I was doing what a lot of you guys do and detective work, which is just checking your phones and busting out your laptops at odd hours just because you have this thought or you have like, you're restless and oh, the family's just relaxing or the family's sleeping anyway. It's 4 a.m. I'm like wide awake. I'll just start working and earn and like be productive. Like, great. Like there's so many things that my body and my soul needed more than maintaining Excel spreadsheets for hiring goals. But hey, so yeah, sometimes it's that, and other times it's I'd say more recently it's just this inner chatter is kind of nagging at me to be like, what is the purpose? What are you doing? Right? Like, is the tail wagging the dog, and whether that's work or personal, and am I being intentional? Like, am I being short? Like, so relationally, emotionally, yeah, like a big trigger for me, or I suppose a symptom is being really short with my daughter, and yeah, kids can be very testing and they're learning how to push your buttons and they're getting really good at it. But I'm the adult, right? Like I'm telling her to learn to take breaths and take a moment and, walk away if she needs a moment, some alone time. But meanwhile, I'm just like, bah, 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 and so I'm like, wow, hypocrite. And, like not modeling what you literally talked about like 4 hours ago.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I usually know that's usually a good like warning flat. Like you need to take a step back is when I'm short with my daughter too.
Yeah.
Because like kids, like you said, like they can be like just because I love her and she's my child doesn't mean that she can't be an asshole too. And that happens, but like you said, I'm the adult here. Like I have to be the adult. I have to be the grown up and show her. So I'll notice that one too. Mine, I also will wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I'll just work. Everyone else is sleeping. So that's a good cue for me also.
Yeah.
I've been recently getting like physically sick from stress. So like anyone that may be listening, like if you are like constantly worn down and like you're getting sick, your immune system, like it could be very well a stress issue. That's what I've been dealing with. So
yeah, no, that's a real thing. Like it makes sense when people think about it. Like, oh, you're under recovered and you're stressed. Like your body's trying to fight something off, and that's doesn't have the capacity to do that because it's so taxed. Yeah, I think these are great like signs, and people can watch out for that because it does manifest in that, right? Like, and you talk.
Yes.
I'm just reminded too when you're saying, oh yeah, you just wake up and you start working. Like there was an earlier chapter in my life where being on nights and not sleeping well, I would wake up and then work out because that was like a distraction and it was like this neurosis almost. And like
and you
probably the worst thing I could have done is like more weightlifting when you're not sleeping enough. And yeah. And I talk about, tanked thyroid and hormones and all that from not sleeping and just grinding through and more coffee, another pot of coffee, like up till the point I was driving home after working graveyard, like
with an energy
tired,
drink?
yawning, rolling the window down, drinking coffee at like 6:20 in the morning. Like that is terrible. And that was like routine. So yeah, that's why I get so passionate about those things and the self-care and just like maintenance, like even if you think that like the notion of self-care is a little woo or a little like soft for you or whatever. Like, just, do you want to operate well? Do you want to be like proficient and
That's all.
safe
Yes.
and tactical and everything, like sharp, right? And you can't do
Yes.
that if you're doing what I was doing.
No, no one
Or you
can.
can for a little while, and then yeah, you will get sick. Like
And then
to
then
your
you
point.
really fall. Yes. I've been I'm big on the self-care. There's been this mantra I've been saying to myself a lot lately, and it's just be nicer to your body, like,
Mm,
and that's mentally and physically. And for some reason, it's really resonating with me. It's like I said, I have ADHD, so I have a really hard time like cleaning or doing that kind of stuff. So I find myself like when I'm trying to find like this piece of me to get something done or to like, hey, be kind to yourself. That's a kind gesture to yourself. Like
mm,
you're gonna appreciate that later, and it's a thank you, you're welcome kind of situation just to you. And then like same with like the food I put in my body. I'm constantly just thinking this is a nice act to do to yourself.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it does sound woo woo, but it's a game changer.
yeah.
Like I'll never sacrifice my health again. Like I did terribly last year, and uh, I've had to make like a huge comeback from all that stress and everything, and learning like how my body handles that.
Hmm.
But just be kind to yourself. Be nice to your body.
Yeah. Was it a lot of signs looking back that you just like pushed through, or you kind of swatted away? Was there recognition of that?
I was fully aware, but just fully drowning. Like
Mm,
just it was the detective curve, like just learning like how to do that job. And then uh just summer in Kent, it's busy.
hmm.
Um and I was working all night, like typing by myself in the middle of the night and working on stuff. And I finally just hit my breaking point, and um I think I did a complete shock to like my entire system. Like I gained 15, 20 pounds, like still trying to figure that out, all my medications and everything. But
Mm,
the it'll mess you up. That stress will. That's just like me saying, like, please don't let it get to that point because it
hmm.
is really hard to return back from.
Yeah.
Sometimes cops are just like, I got to figure it out for myself.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people verbalize that, like, hey, you might have the answers, and I don't mean you like me. I'd be like
Mm-hmm.
maybe their parent or their boss. They're like, hey, I get it, but that's good self awareness too, to be like, I need to stumble and trip before I like really recognize it, before it resonates, and I really adopt it in a way that works for me. Um, are there ways that you could that would be helpful to share as like when you finally were like, okay, enough's enough? Like, what helped get you there? Like, maybe what was the recognition, and then do you have like bumpers now, like to keep you on track? Like, you have these guardrails so that you don't drift back into that, because old habits can die hard sometimes.
Oh yeah, yes. I regularly go to therapy. I was going like once a month at the time, and I upped it to once a week. And
Mm,
then I made the rule with myself and my therapist. We gathered like these boundaries we were setting. I was not going to check my work phone on the weekend,
mm,
which is really hard to do as a detective.
yeah.
Not send like emails. Um, really focus on my morning routine, which has been a lot more helpful than I expected. I'm usually last one out the door. I still am like a lot of times, but like uh having that time to myself in the morning has been really helpful, and like it sets me up for my day, like to start off the day like I'm rushing, like running around with like a my hair up, like wet. Like if you're starting your day like that, like it's typically not going to work out well. So it's
Yeah.
just like I think if you had to put it all in one word, it's just like the like preparation, like just
Yeah.
being prepared.
Hmm.
Um, and not letting things get so far behind that like it's you're scrambling to get it back together, like with chores or something like that just adds up. Because like I'm not only just a detective, I'm also a mom, and I'm also a girlfriend, and I have my homeowner, and I have to do all these things like in there's not enough time in the day.
Hmm.
um so like I've found that like preparation, like meal prepping, like has been a huge game changer. um Therapy, morning routine, I gotta say is one of the bigger ones.
I love
So
that.
I'll have a cup of tea. I'll just kind of, I don't know, read up on the news a little bit and maybe do my makeup slowly while I'm watching Real Housewives, like that kind of bullshit. But
Yeah.
yeah,
A calming wake up, right? Start your day off with that
it's
energy, and you're not hectic. And because, yeah, I can see that kind of continuing. You're almost like starting that. Hey, that's the theme of the day, like wet hair, running out the door, and then you're reactive and you're delayed, and you're kind of not prepped for each thing that may come to you, right? Whereas maybe you're waking up a little earlier, intentional, like you say there's not enough hours in the day, and like, yeah, it feels like that because oftentimes we don't carve out that time. There's a lot of people with I think we're both good and practice at being grateful. There's so many people that have like a plate that's like triple you or me. Adversity and like just like life circumstances, maybe they don't have the stability or like the job or like the what have you, the networks, the relationships. And so
yes,
for them, like sometimes people can handle so much, but they have to be so like regimented on that stuff. So I'm like, I for sure, I love that you brought that up, because for me, it's in times when things are going a lot smoother for me in my life, is when I lean into and I'm more regimented about those routines versus when I'm kind of ad hoc about it,
yep.
and then reactive, right?
Reactive. And God, it's like they say that in police work all the time, is being reactive. So it's, yeah, I've learned a lot about myself in about the last year, especially with just being intentional. Also, you know what? Like, I've been here for 7 years. For 6 of those 7 years, all I knew myself was I was a cop. That's all I knew. But like I've really leaned into like doing stuff that I enjoy. Like I'm having a lot of fun like doing like home projects, and I got like an iPad. I've been doing a lot of like graphic art lately, and
Yeah.
um that's been huge for me. And I was never a good hobby person. I was always looking for something to have a hobby with. But like finding that identity outside like has been really helpful.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's huge. I mean, more and more they're saying like you live outside the blue world, like don't fully identify, like this can't be your whole identity. It's so hard because, I think that we look around our circles or people we know in the region, like some of the best cops, like they did make it like a huge overwhelming part of their life, put it that way. Um but it can't be all the time, it can't be forever. Right? Like you toggle on, and um our mutual friend and colleague Steiner, right? Like he put it one way where it was contrary to what a lot of people say, for new people. Some people are like, hey, just go through like focus on one thing at a time, go to academy, right? Like just focus on what they're teaching you, and then we'll teach you other stuff. But I liked how he put it one time in a conversation with a group. He's like, no, like you're new, like immerse yourself, like just like dive in, like you have this excitement and you have this passion, like pick up every input you can, right? Like read articles, watch videos, like hear these breakdowns, because you're just a sponge. And I'm like, okay, he put it in such a way that I see what he's saying. um However, it's like, yeah, you can't do that for like 5-10 years and put your family on the back burner. um and that's where I love the concept of balance, but I think that there's always imbalance, especially with our jobs and our type of lifestyle, where you got to realize when you're pouring it on, and then you got that vacation coming up where you're actually going to put the work phone on airplane mode. If anything's really that big of a deal, they'll call your personal. If it's like something happened to a buddy, like, yes, I want to know, but they'll call my personal. I trust that. Um, and then maybe, to ease the burden of the inbox, I'll start checking some emails at the airport on the way home, just because I'm
Okay.
shifting back into the mindset anyway.
Mm-hmm. Do you get Sunday scaries?
Yeah, it's funny, like my wife uses that term. I do and I don't. And I'll bring up an example that I think could be helpful for people is, you brought up Wheeler, and he he shared, and we were chatting about how, you may open up your email on your days off to try to just like minimize the huge like deluge, right?
Yep.
And I think that's you got to find what's right for you. Some people are best like do not pass go. do not collect your $200, because if you open that thing up, you're going to be on there for the next hour and a half, right? And then you're calling people, and then you're trying to look for something and get an answer. I'm trying to dabble. I'm getting better, I think, but I'm trying to find that balance, because yeah, like if you're working weekends, as like for us in Commander land, not a lot of administrative things or like meetings happen on the weekends, so people are just kind of waiting on you, or you're waiting on people. It could be productive and better for your psyche if you actually address some of it. But anything that's not super quick, I'm just like, okay, if this needs me to actually write a back, like if I'm better suited doing this on the laptop, then that's the signal that I probably shouldn't reply. And that, I think that's where you get the reply all to the whole city or the whole department, like, because people are, yeah, they're disjointed. And it's so like my twist, because a lot of us are such doers and productive people, and we want to be as much as we can, is recognize and maybe question this, is like, if you're doing this right now on your phone in your kitchen, is that the most effective, efficient way to do it? Or are you splitting attention? You're trying to make breakfast, you're trying to start the day with your family. Yes. Maybe you glance at the emails just to see if there's any huge fires. Mm-hmm. Probably not, or you would have gotten a voicemail and a text message, or a call on the personal phone, and then you know what you're walking into. It might reduce the Sunday scaries a little bit, just to be aware of what's on your plate, and then you just put it down. Or you do the quick replies, hey, yep, I'm on it, I'm aware, I'll sit down tomorrow when I'm in the office, so your bosses know that you're not just blowing things off. So again, balance might be for everyone, but my pitch would be, if you're doing this it's like kind of like a half effort, and why not just try to do as much whole effort as you can, which would require you to be at work.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like somewhere in the middle. I'm not fully sticking to that rigid boundary of never checking my stuff, because sometimes I get curious about something, or I want to check, or I want to reduce Sunday scaries. Like I feel like that often. But like you open it, like you see those little icons, you're like mail. You're like, I know one of these, when I open it, it's going to be the one that's like, it's going to open up Pandora's box. Like, you're screwed. But so I'm still figuring that out myself. Like, I still don't know, but I don't know what's worse, is the Sunday scaries or the hitting it all once you get to the office. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Yeah. But I think that introspection is important. You brought it up earlier in a different vein, but like that intentionality, if you're pulling up your email, let's say like 5 p.m. the day before you go back in the office, that might help you plan your day better the next day, which might help you be less stressed the next day, right? So I think a lot of people probably lean that way. Like they want to know what's coming so that they don't just get overwhelmed. If that's to the whole, I think that, but recognizing that and then knowing that's your goal, and then self-checking like, hey, is that actually reducing things, or did I just bust my phone out at my kid's soccer game, and now I literally have no idea what's going on, and my head's swirling. Okay, maybe not the best time.
And who like bamboozles us more than anyone is ourselves. Like,
yeah, 100%.
We think, oh, this be fine. No. And then all of a sudden you're down the rabbit hole again. You're like, oh my God, like, how did this happen again? Mm-hmm. So I find myself the person who screws myself over the most is me. Put that on my gravestone.
But unless you ask yourself, who knows? Like, and you're going to try different things. I mean, you've been in your role for roughly a year.
Yeah, over a year now.
Right? And so I haven't even hit a year as a commander. So it's just a very different role and different expectations, and emails play a different role, right? So just trying to find the groove. And I think that if you're asking yourself the questions and you're trying to get advice and input from colleagues, and you'll get there. You'll find what works for you. But not if you don't think about it and you just keep doing what you're doing.
Do you think, I'm turning the tables a little bit. I'm asking you questions.
Let's go.
Do you think commander, your position now, is the most stressful position you've had so far?
Yes and no. It's funny because, oftentimes whether it's like just in the hallways through the years, you ask people what their favorite job was, and then doing the podcast, like now I'm talking to cops like across the country and retirees, and like if they've done it, it's almost like there's two veins, right? Sergeant. It's almost always like patrol sergeant and canine, and then it's also like whatever role like they really resonate with. Sometimes it's, the PROAC unit, because they're like, well, I got to work cases and then I really got to hunt down these bad dudes or what have you. And of course that's dependent, but for people that have climbed, oftentimes it's sergeant. I think, I make no mistake, and I didn't have any impressions that this was going to be a fun role, and it's definitely not. But I also like am really quick to say like I just need to get better about recognizing the fun or the progress or the validation where it's not quite as obvious. Maybe like I know why I went to this role, and so there's no regrets, but more stressed. The most stressed I ever was, well, I mean, it's time and place, like life, right? And this is not a satisfying answer, but I remember being extremely stressed in Canine when my dog wasn't biting. Like, because I'm like, all eyes are on you and everyone's depending on you. What if, like, oftentimes your dog doesn't need to bite? You have force options, you have cover officers. A lot of times they see the dog and they give up. Cool. It's a locating tool. But you, as a canine, you always talk about, okay, what about that one guy who doesn't want to go to jail and like is going to ambush? Like, you need the dog to do what the dog needs to do. Like, that's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves. That was extremely stressful. It like consumed my life for weeks, months. At the same time, like another point was probably more just the times, but running a patrol crew post Floyd, like that was extremely stressful because I had a lot of people I felt like depended on me to try to navigate their emotions, but also like be safe and like do what they need to do to protect themselves. And just not have this swirl of negativity that consume them, because I felt it too.
Yes.
But like brass tacks, like the tasks was doing recruiting and training at the same time. It was just so many things.
Too much.
2 jobs. I just felt like there was not enough time in the day, kind of to the point earlier. I didn't have good boundaries. And so that's where it all kind of came to a head.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say like I try to be cautious about talking too much about command, because I feel like most of the audience is not a commander. So if I'm like, yeah, guys, you know the stress of being a commander, and they're like, okay, like whatever. But it is I think most people that are understanding could recognize when they say they never want to promote past X or ever, like it is those things. You're correct about those things. There's a lot of not winning. There's a lot of not pleasing people. There's a lot of these perceived zero-sum games where you're trying to do the best on a policy or a direction or verbiage, and you're just not going to make everyone happy. In fact, you'll just piss people off a lot of times. It feels that way, but it's a necessary role. It's just like we all have a piece of the pie, and so it's I'm trying to find the groove, because there aren't enough hours in the day either, right? Like if you want to think about all the things you could do to help improve your workplace and your team you work with and for, I think we should recognize we work for the people subordinate to us. They're the ones doing the work. We're just in a different place where technically we should be able to make some changes, weigh out some things. Yeah, it's tricky, and I think like that's probably the most stressful part for me so far, being coming up on a year, is just trying to navigate my own expectations and try to show up the right amount of, the right way, the right amount that people can see it or feel it. Because there's a lot of people, at the officer level that, again, you can't please everyone, and perceptions become reality. And so just trying to find healthy boundaries on that has been tricky.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it public. I'm not interested in that position. I don't like. No, thank you. I'll stay down with the peasants.
Things change.
I'll stay down with the peasants, officers and detectives.
Hey, you guys have cooler digs than I do. Let's be real. Like
the
main station cubicle. The Cush office was NRT sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
That was right next to investigations commander.
Yep.
Like upper floor, new building, like office with a door. Like I'm in a cubicle. My desk is falling apart, and I'm not complaining. Yep. I just like joking about it because it's true.
Yeah, everyone has the shitty parts too. Not everyone has. Just because you're commander doesn't mean it's any better. There's good and bad in every thing. And the reason I asked you that, because I was trying to, I've been asking myself if detectives is more stressful than patrol.
Hmm.
Because in patrol, I've had way more crazier things happen. But I still don't know the answer.
Yeah, it depends is the answer, and
yeah, just like everything.
It depends on like what's going on in your life outside of work, and it's a different kind of stress. I'd say that, right? Like, was recruiting stressful? Like, not the job itself, but the pressure and feeling like, oh, if you like do a good job, you could literally improve the quality of life of everyone that works in your department because they're not burned out on mandates and they can share caseload and they're safer. That's a big burden. But if you're like, well, if you suck, then you suck and everyone knows it, and like you literally are a waste of space because we'd rather have you here shagging calls with us than doing whatever it is you're doing on, like, I can only see on social media. So like, yes, it depends. I think that, it's an age old us them thing that I talk about where it's like, oh, like detectives have it so good. But they're just, they're just whining about how crappy of a job we do in patrol because they watch our body cam and they Monday morning quarterback us, but you don't see them coming back to patrol. Meanwhile, people don't want to, be on call and file cases. And so it's like, there's truth in there, but I think our problem, and this is not a Kent specific, it's an everywhere problem, is we're focused on who has it worse rather than being like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. So I'm going to give some empathy and recognize we're on the same team. And rather than fixate my attention negatively towards my coworkers, I'm going to fixate my passion, we'll call it that, towards the a-holes out there that are victimizing people, and focus my positive energy towards my coworkers and the people that need help. I mean, we all have our moments, and I like to add, like, I'm not immune to that, right? I'm not trying to come off preachy. Like, I'm super judgy and negative at times. Like, I get same thing. But the reason why I talk about it is because I need the reminder, just like we all do.
I guess I have to get it out. Just actually verbalize it or express it, because I feel it's very easy to shift into the me versus we dynamic, I guess. It's like Spider-Man, like everyone's pointing the Spider-Man's.
Oh yeah, the meme, yeah.
Yes, patrol command detectives. They're all pointing. I'll make you that meme later.
I'm surprised it hasn't been done. I mean, like, you could do every dynamic, right? Because it's sadly, and that's like, I'm joking about it, but I mean, when we were in hiring, no one really wanted to trade spaces, but they're like, hey, why don't you pull a beat sometimes? I'm like, because that's literally not my job. Like, I won't be able to do my job if I do that. And yeah, sure, sometimes versus all the time. I get where it's coming from. And there's power in that, showing up and trying to help. But we all have a lane, and if we all do our lane well, then we'll be okay. But yeah, is that infighting that's not helpful?
No, it's not.
Yeah, but I like the. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
I just wish we could all get along.
Right?
Yeah, it's not bad.
We'll get there. No, but one thought is when you said, like, hey, I just had to verbalize that. It reminded me of when you're joking about being a bad therapist client, like verbalizing. But I did want to say, like, I think that is the secret sauce, is talking to somebody or processing your thoughts in some way. Yes. I mean, some people are like, why do you talk about therapy all the time? I'm like, well, it's a tool. When I talk about peer support, it's a tool. Maybe none of these tools are for you. Maybe it's talking to your buddy, back from school. Maybe it's journaling, because then you're getting your thoughts out. I think the main takeaway is, like, these are all modalities to process your thoughts, and only you are going to know what's best, right? Like, you try therapy, that therapist sucks. This other one might be awesome, or you might just be like, I'm not into it. I'm not into any of it. I do these other things. I'm in a faith group. I'm in what have you, right? Or a small support group. But I love how, Chaplain Pat, he for years has said, like, he has something scheduled, like, quarterly or, a couple times a year, just as, like, if nothing else, a self check, right?
Yep.
It's like, let's look under the hood, and he can recognize how he's doing. a lot of times. But absent that, we just keep in our habits and we lose track of things.
Yeah, I think it's good to like it's important to keep trying. And like it's really discouraging that like not every therapist is going to click with you. I very much enjoyed my first therapist. Then my second one has been incredible. Like I'm seeing just like how therapy could like really work for me. It's there's no, it's not one size fits all. It's not, it's different for everyone. You just have to be curious and figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Because I've had a lot to work with. So
yeah. No, that's great. It's like doctors, and I think that's an example some people have heard, but I'll just say it again. Like, it's like getting a second opinion, right? Like most of us have met some doctor where you're like, I don't know that you know what you're talking about, or I don't know that you care, or I don't get the sense that you care. And that makes you feel a certain way. Or you fill in the blank, right? Any practitioner. So it doesn't mean you give up on doctors. Maybe you just go to a different clinic and it's a different vibe. It's a different doctor. If you hate your dentist, like I can think of one dentist that I hate. But I started like when I went to that office and they're scheduling, I'm like, only this doc, not that one. And a lot of people in my neighborhood like had the same kind of thing. They're like, that guy? No, not that guy. We go to her. It doesn't mean I give up on dentistry. It just means like he's not my jam. I don't want to spend time with him. I don't want to give him my money. That's okay.
It is okay because it is my money and it is my time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to spend it with someone that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not someone that's just taking it. So, nope.
Absolutely. We talked a lot about self-care and some of your health recognitions, and I mean, both of us kind of having to navigate. Have you thought, or I'm curious about not just the work and not just detective work, but specifically your role. I've been on record saying, and I usually am really good about clarifying it, like that's a role, like special assault, cases with kids, sex victims, like that's something that personally I feel I'm so scared of it. Like I feel like it would create these really tenuous stressors for my personal life. I don't know how I'd do with boundaries. I don't know how it would affect me. So much to the point where I've said, yeah, I want no part in that in this job. And now it's unlikely that I'd have that direct contact, but it's only to say like how crucial it is and how much I appreciate the women and men that work in those units in those types of fields. I feel like that adds maybe an increased stressor or increased like necessity for the boundaries, because it's just different, right? Like there are these extremely righteous victims. So you're like, well, I don't want to rest for, on their behalf. Like, I don't want to rest until I figure this out for their behalf, like for some semblance of justice or whatever that looks like.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And that's what happened last year. Like when it went sideways on my health. Cause I was like, I get to sleep in my lovely house in Puyallup, just up here with my air conditioning, and I'm just trying to sleep soundly. And all I could think about is these kids are probably getting beat like in their house or something like that. Mm-hmm. It makes it difficult to separate. I don't know. I don't even think I could explain how I got myself out of that, because I still struggle with it too from time to time, but you just learn and you just figure it out. And sometimes like it's just not a match. Sometimes the officer, detective, or whatever, it will never be, and it just isn't. But somewhere along the line, I was able to somehow just switch it off. Like I get in my car and I'm Tessa again. I'm not Detective Melville, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if I'm looking back at it just logically, it's probably me filling up my life with other things to do.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it does. Yeah, those little intrusive thoughts that just kind of pop up out of nowhere, and you just have to. Sometimes I'll out loud be like, nope, we're not talking about that. Like just to myself. or like what I said earlier, like that's not kind to yourself to worry about. So yeah, out loud, like just snapping yourself out of it. That's what but it was really difficult at first. It was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So I wish I had more.
No, I appreciate that. And I think a lot of, people that come on and when we talk through these things, it's not like we have the answers. I mean, we're all just humans trying the best at this like weird whole human thing we're doing, and continuing to learn and like ask questions and challenge ourselves and not having the answers, but thinking through that. I think literally how you put it is going to help a lot of people to be like, no, Tessa doesn't have the answers or all of them. She knows some things that help and some things like you got to fight them off with like a baseball bat. Like they're going to be intrusive and her routine's going to be all, her awesome tea morning routine. Okay. It's not every day. So no, I think it just, I really appreciate the sharing because I truly think that kind of modeling and examples, it tells everybody who may be listening to cut yourself some slack, consider these things. It's not going to be a perfect thing. And then even in retirement, we'll probably have the times we wake up, we're like, oh, what about that one time? Or, man, like what could I be doing different? Or what could I be doing better? Whenever it is, whatever the thing is.
I try and to combat like the bad. Like I try and note or write down or I keep like the CADs of like good stories that I'll remember. So hopefully like when I'm retired or something, I'll wake up and be like, oh, remember that guy that I don't know.
Yeah.
He was naked and we fought him. He was covered in mud. Like just remembering just the weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Do you have any just goofy, just kind of off tangent stories that are popping up? Because you kind of brought that up earlier. And then you're reminiscing, right?
Yeah.
These calls and stories.
The two that I just told, I probably cannot say over podcast, but
there's got to be a version. It's like there's so many things removed that people don't even know what happened.
We could talk about flipping my car. You put that in the Instagram post. I went. Just a wild day. I had my car for my brand new Explorer after driving those old Tahoes forever. It's my fourth day with it. Fourth day, brand new Explorer. Andrew Reed and I were working the 5 at the Valley, and what was it? We were trolling for stolen cars, I think. Yeah, we're like up in the industrial area, and we find one. Expired tabs. Like this again, this is pre all the pursuit laws, so things were a little different back then. We get in the pursuit this car for expired tabs of all things, which sounds insane to me now, even saying it. But so it's going north. It's going to Tukwila. I'm a y'all Tacoma gal. Like I don't pretty much anything north of Kent. I'm screwed. I don't know anything.
Yeah,
about it.
I'm the opposite, so I feel you. Yeah.
And so we get into, I think it was like off West Valley. They take this turn. It's a dark, poorly lit road. And again, it's like 3 a.m. Working graveyard. And we're hauling. Like I'm second. Nope, I'm first.
Yeah.
No, what am I? I can't remember where the order. But that's not
somewhere in there.
Oh, no, I'm third. There's the suspect car, Andrew Reed, and then I'm the last one. So I'm calling it.
Okay. So you're second in the pursuit. Yeah.
Yeah, second in the pursuit. So unbeknownst to me, there's a giant 90-degree turn, like straight ahead. Again, like poorly lit, thin road, and I'm in a pursuit, like things, I'm distracted. My wheel was turned just enough, and like they downloaded the black box after I was going 83, I think. When I hit my brake, my wheel was turned just enough that it locked all my tires up. And I just go, we have the 90-degree, and I just blow right through it into the grass. I hit several trees. I hit a sign that I later find out to be the Tukwila fire station sign.
Oh, wow.
Which is hilarious when I think back to it. And I'm going through, and I remember like very distinctly it's crazy in those moments because your brain can think so fast, even though like things are happening in just a millisecond. Like I remember screaming out loud an obscenity. And then I remember thinking, oh my God, this is how I'm going to die. That's so embarrassing. And then I
The
thought,
embarrassing part for sure. Yeah. You're like, that's what I'm thinking of.
and then
People
I
are
thought,
going to never let this go.
and they didn't. They still don't.
Yeah.
They're actually pretty good about it. But
well, because you walked away from it, which is
yeah,
like I've heard it described as miraculous, which probably isn't super far off. Like it was seeing the car and how jacked up it was.
And so I also had like the word, I was like, I could probably walk away here, or not walk away. Probably 2 broken legs, maybe some broken arms. Let's see what the damage is. Or like broken back. I hope I'm not paralyzed. Like I remember having all these thoughts in like half a second. I eventually, my passenger's front light, that part of the vehicle hits a large tree, flips my car upside down. I like fully cleared the top of my car. So like my lights are still intact. I'm flipping. I remember like my arms and legs like going up in the air, like woo, like, like I'm in a roller coaster
kind of thing.
Yeah. And like all of a sudden I'm jostled up right. And I'm like looking around. It's really quiet. I'm looking around. My car is a mess. Like there's papers everywhere. My mic's off the mic stand because it's magnetic. Like it'd fallen off. I look around. I was like, holy shit. And I like pat myself down, make sure I'm not injured or like I don't have a bone sticking out of me. And then I say it again. I'm like, holy shit, I'm okay. And so I hear Andrew on the radio and he's got the guy at gunpoint. And I'm like looking around. I can't see anything. My airbags are all deployed, everything. So I cut out the airbags and I shimmy my way out of the car. I can't remember if I had to go through the window or not, but and I run up. The guy actually lost control at the same turn, so like I don't feel too bad about it. Andrew said he also lost control, but figured it out. So that guy also crashed. I run up there, get my gun out, and I have it, downrange or at the ready, and Andrew looks at me. He's like, hey, where's your car? I was like, I crashed it. And I was like, all right, hands up. Like, just.
Let's talk about that later.
Yep, pretty much. I crashed it. And I was like, we have other things to do. And so then we took him into custody. And like, when I heard the second click of the handcuffs, like click, click, I like sat down. I was like, oh my God, I think I have a concussion. And so, yeah, I sure enough did. But I managed to flip my entire car, break out every window, without, I had a few bruises and scratches, but that was the worst of the damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad you're okay.
Thank you. It was a cool write-up because I did get written up for causing $60,000 of damage.
That'll happen. That's fair, right?
But in the counseling sheet, it did say, like, I do want to commend Officer Melville for staying in the fight and like running out, even though she had just been through this thing. And so I still have that saved somewhere, but it's just stuff like that, like you'll remember for your entire life. And
for sure,
I love those stories.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I never found out exactly where it happened, but it was by a fire station. I don't know exactly where that is, but yeah, West Valley, as it turns into, like, if anyone from Tukwila is like listening or people that know the area, like with all the Andovers, like east-west Strander, like all that noise. There are parts where it's like a 90-degree curve and it goes into like sudden darkness. It's like a go-kart track and like just giant size. It's pretty goofy with all the concrete, and case in point, like why we have the the policy guardrails that we do, and like slowing down when you're outside of your area. Like, this is not to disparage you, but this is to get to a point where
there's so many learning points in it.
Well, yeah, and like, shoot, like maybe Reed like handled it because he was close enough to see the suspect lose control that he was able to lose some speed, right? And then maybe you're behind. All right, well, this is funny. I just got a text from Tessa. Her laptop died, so that will be the conclusion of any wisdom from Tessa for this day. I think we're getting right to that time frame where I was going to see if she had any closing remarks, but I think I want to leave it as is because it's pretty funny. I think this is the first one. Sometimes it's like a technical glitch, but this time it's just Tessa's battery. So again, I want to thank Tessa, although she's not listening at this moment, for coming back on the show. If you want to hear her earlier episode where she talks about her pathway into police from her military days and her career progression, some of the lessons learned throughout, that's episode 98. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for contributing to the positive message. It's all about how we can support our first responders in our community and just build alignment, build positivity, same teamness. All right. Thanks again, guys. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.